This is part 2 of Phillip's story. So check out part 1 if you haven't already.
When I lost my daughter, I lost the company,
Yeah.
like I had no value. And so like, for me, I was just like, what's the point of me moving on?
Right.
I had nothing. Like,
For what?
I built the company. I don't have that anymore. I had a kid that like I put all my energy into. So, not building homes anymore. Don't have my kid. And I was just like, well, the rest of the family can survive without me. When I got that insurance, when I upped my insurance policy, I was just like, this is it. Because it's like, I felt like I had no value.
Yeah.
And everything that I had built and, created was like, it was gone. And so like at that moment, like, I was creating the end of my story. Like, this is it. Like, over the course of, I think I drove trucks for about 2 years over the road, and I had teammates. And then they finally gave me my own truck, and that's when like the depression set in so bad. Because as long as I had somebody in the truck,
right,
I had to communicate. And there would be times I remember when we would pull over at a truck stop, and the truck would like be broken.
Yeah. And
it had to get repaired, and I would lose my mind
because
I had to stop. And I was alone and I had to deal with stuff, and I would cry. And my buddy was like, this guy's emotional. I don't know what to do. It's like, but I wanted to just keep going, keep working. And so when you do team driving, the truck's always moving. And when the truck would stop, I would get so depressed. So when they gave me my own truck, that was the worst thing, because I was alone by myself driving and thinking. I would sleep for like days when I didn't have loads. And at that point, I was just like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm out here by myself.
Yeah.
No one to really talk to, because I'm driving at night, sleeping in the daytime. And so, like, when that morning, I just remember it like clear as day. I was at the truck stop, and I had planned everything out. And I told you, like, my sister had called.
Yeah.
And was just like, hey, I want to drive with you next week. I was like, no, like, I don't know, because I had no plans. I was just like, looked at the map. There's a bridge, I'm just going to go off there. Can't write a note.
Right. So you're going to make it look like it was an accident.
Because it was like, if I leave a note, then it's like, they don't get the money. And I was like, that's it. I'm just going to leave millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And that's it,
And they'll be better off that way.
Yeah. And I feel like they would be better off. And, because it's like, what was I doing?
Right.
Like, and like I told you, I was making like, going from making like $4,000 to $6,000 a week to $398 a week. That was so depressing. My life had drastically changed, and I couldn't keep up like the financial responsibilities doing that.
Right.
And I was just sinking in like, okay, my daughter passed away, the business is gone. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I got up and I drove that truck. He got it to the bridge and was just driving. And probably because I think way too much and I'm always processing, I think I thought myself through like not committing suicide, although I was supposed to let go of the wheel, but I was like still thinking and processing. And then I got on the other side of the bridge. It's like, oh, I was supposed to go off back there. And at that point, like every time I encounter someone and help them change their life or speak to kids, like, I remember that day. I'm like, man, I'm so glad I didn't follow through with that, because I could have made another attempt.
Right.
And it's, it's one of those things where it's, you always have an out, and you can take the out anytime, and sometimes life just gets overwhelming until you feel like that's the only option.
Right.
And it's really not.
It's not.
There's more to the story. Who knew that we would be sitting right here talking about this and talking about everything that I've been through, or like the lives that I've changed over the years and people that I've come in contact with, past that point when I was like, oh, this is the end.
This is it.
But here I am, like living and thriving and like about to like do some like amazing things in 2020 that we have planned to like speak to schools, help with child hunger, help with leukemia, and it's with the leukemia research. And it's like, here I am, like, man, if you would have told me, like, Phil, just live another day.
Right.
You know? And no one was there to tell me to do that, you know? And it was difficult, you know? And so when I hear people talk about thoughts of suicide, that is real.
100%.
You know? Because it's like, you know, and at the point that you decide, like, suicide is the way out, you know, if you've already made up your mind, you have no other options.
That's right.
So why would you live past that point?
Right.
And it was, and that's what gives me chills down my spine, you know, after speaking and getting the reaction from people, because I was just like, if I didn't cross that bridge, if I didn't keep driving that truck, I would not be here to have a conversation with you, you know, or to have a conversation with people after giving a speech or talking to them. And I'm just like, man, the people that lives have been changed would not have been changed, you know? But sometimes we can't see past the hurt.
And it's so hard. Like, suicide is such it's its own podcast. It's its own episode in itself. But until you have been that low and have had those thoughts, I feel like people want to talk about it and pass judgment. I'm like, you can't. Until you've been there and understand what your brain is going through, like, no one understands unless you've actually been there. And I pray that most people haven't experienced it or will not experience it. But for the people that have, like you and me, who have been there, have planned it, like, this is it, this is what I'm going to do, and have come out the other side, like, I just pray that people considering it and hearing it, that we can just change their minds, because we've been there.
Yeah.
And, you know, going to see a psychologist and a therapist, like, all of that's great, but they probably haven't had those thoughts per se. But like somebody like you and me, just a person out in the world, we have, and this is our story, and hopefully sharing that and how we got through it, and knowing that it wasn't an overnight thing, that it took a lot of work, but it is doable. But you got to just keep moving forward, and you got to ask for help. Yeah. Especially these young kids.
You seriously have to ask for help, because it's like, if no one stops you, there's nothing mentally going to stop you.
Right.
You know, because it's like your mind is made up that, like, you know, there's no value or worth past this point.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
And whatever the situation, it could be, it's like, you know, people can say it's a small issue. Whatever leads you to that point is big enough to break you.
Right.
You know? And it's just like, you know, at that point, you're not strong enough to stop yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, I even listened to yours, like, you know, that phone call, like you probably wouldn't have stopped.
No.
You know, if I wasn't such an overthinker, like, I wouldn't have stopped either. And that was probably God just like, keep thinking, buddy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's just like, you know, my heart goes out to any person that's in that state, you know, because it's like, no one's going to get to you unless you let them in.
Right.
You know, because it's an eternal battle.
Totally.
It's, you know, no one knows what you're dealing with. It's like, oh, it's like great guy, everyday life. You know, it's like, you know, Phillip just took his last load and like, who knew?
Right.
You know,
right.
like I was on top of everything. No signs of anything changed. Like,
right.
you know, I was like always on time for my lows, always taking care of. No one knew what I was dealing with.
But everything's internal.
Yeah, everything's internal.
You have to be able to talk to somebody, to one person, if you are that deep down.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that it's going to help. That's the only thing that's going to help fix it. And I see, you know, we talk about it. I think it's more prevalent with men. It is statistically that men take their own lives more than women, because they've spent all of these years hiding these emotions, and that's the only way out for them. And how can anyone blame them until you've actually been in their shoes?
True.
And this whole like committing suicide, like I won't even use that term, because you commit a crime.
Yeah.
You know, suicide's a different sort of thing.
No, it's totally different.
So just really encouraging people to talk to someone, just someone.
Yeah. And, you know, especially men, because I feel like we prepare ourselves to go through with it by isolating ourselves,
Right.
and by not like talking and sharing. Period. The simple things, because it's like, it's not a man thing to do to share my problems,
Right?
And having a therapist like is great, but like I think like for a guy initially, it's just like having a friend,
Right.
Somebody that you share information like what you're going through, or someone that actually cares. And it always come by surprise. I think when it's guys, is because like we can be so close,
Right.
and you'd be like, man, I wish he would have said something.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was going through that. I was right there the other day.
Yep. Yep.
Like I was with him. Who knew he was dealing with all that? And it hurts because it's so close, to have like friends that or people that that commit suicide. And you may have talked like the day before or 2 days before. And a lot of guys, I hear it all the time. It's like, we don't share enough.
If I had only known, right? If I had only known about him.
Yeah. And it's just like, we have the capability to help and want to help. And, it was like, for instance, my situation, when I talked to one of my buddies, like, he was like, man, I did not know you were going through all that. Why didn't you call me? And we just sat in silence.
Because you don't have an answer.
Yeah. I was just like, why would I call you and tell you I was hurting?
Right.
Why would I call you and tell you I was dealing with all of this?
Not what we do, but
yeah,
what if we start doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Let's just start it.
And that's what I was like, we can change the narrative. We can change all of that, And as men, like, we set the standard for a lot of males, to just be open and honest and share, And one of the things that I learned, I think I talked to you about this, like, with my father, like not being so emotional, like, men don't cry, that kind of thing. And I was going through like a breakup, and my kids got really close to the girl that I was talking to. And that story unfolded a little bit more after we talked, which is crazy. I want to share it. And so like, I remember like, it's just like, it's the man thing to do. You talk, but you don't show any emotions. And so I'm sharing with the kids like, hey, like me and her are no longer together. Sometimes you got to make decisions.
Yep.
When people don't treat you a certain way, you have to like respect yourself, and I'm having this talk like, like relatable. Hey, like if someone disrespects you, don't keep yourself in that position or what have you. And, and it's funny how like characters are so different.
Yeah.
Like, my son, he's like carefree, and my youngest daughter, like in my words, she's heartless, and so, but my oldest is like so emotional, she's very sensitive.
Yeah.
And her eyes started to water, and my son was like, are you okay? And then I was just like, are you? And then my youngest was like, nah, she's not okay. and then my oldest was like, I'm okay. And she was like, no, you're not. And I'm like, it's okay. And she asked me a question, and it hit hard. She was like, did you love her? And I did, and it hurt. And so, and I was about to show any emotions, like, and so I went to answer it, and I broke, and I was like sprinted to the restroom, gotta go, and I went to the restroom, and I started crying and tried to like sober up really quick, and I turned the corner to go back into the kitchen, and my oldest daughter grabbed me. She said, Dad, it's okay, She was just like, I love you. I don't want to see you hurt. It's okay.
Yeah.
And the other two came and crowded around me, and we all held each other, and I just let it rip. I just cried like a baby. We all just like held each other and cried. But our bond from that moment was so different, And it was like to be able to open up to someone without communicating,
right.
And that's the power of emotions, sharing those emotions. And for my daughter to see like, Dad really cares without
Right.
him even saying that he cared.
Right.
Because I just saw his reaction, and that was powerful.
And now your kids are like, well, it's okay to be emotional. And
Yeah.
like, if there's something wrong, I can talk to somebody. So if we start leading by example as adults to our kids, like maybe we can save the next generation from all of this hurt and this pain and this anxiety and suffering. Like, but we have to be the ones to do it first.
Yeah.
And make it okay that they can see us.
Yeah. That's
Open
so
up
true.
and fall down and be vulnerable. Like that's a human, the most human aspect we have is this connection to emotions. But if we try to hide it and we're fine, like we're not.
Yeah.
So that's what they learn that they should do.
Oh, that is so true.
And the cycle continues.
Yeah, because that was my definition of being a man. Like, you don't show anything,
Right.
because I never saw my dad show. And after that moment, I was just like, man, what if my dad
Right.
would have showed me emotion,
Yeah.
and showed me that he really cared by just expressing his emotions? How would that have changed me as a person?
Mm-hmm.
How would have like taught me so much
Yeah.
about like, being a man,
Right.
Which is like, vulnerability is so much of being a man than being masculine, And so I was just like, that would have taught me so much. And it was crazy because it's like, my daughter was like really close to her, and like we had a conversation like months later. And I was talking to her. I was just like, oh man, she wasn't so nice to me, whatever, the girl that I was with. And she was just like, Dad, she was like, you were really nice to her. She was like, you were really good to her. I just wanted to tell you that. And she was like, can I say something? And I was like, sure, you can always speak your mind and talk to me. And she was just like, she was causing so much drama. She was like, I don't know if you do that. I was like, wow. I was like,
Kids
oh
are
my
so-
God.
They're
Yeah.
so, oh my God. Granted, I don't have kids, but I've worked with them for a very long time. They are so much smarter and more observant than we give them credit for. Like they get it. They get
Yeah.
it at a really young age. And they also like, that's how they learn. So if they see their parents treating each other and fighting, like that's normal for them.
Yeah.
So guess what? They're going to repeat that. They're going to go at certain situations with confrontation at school when they're 8 years old. Like, how can we like bring our kids home and be like, how dare my kids do this? And well, I'm sorry, but look in the mirror.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like,
yeah.
no offense, like take responsibility for what you're doing in your own life because your kids see it
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
was like, and it was crazy because like she was like really close to her, and for her to say that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then she was just like, why don't you just block her? You don't need that. I was like, whoa. I was like, you want to be my coach?
Right. But I mean, you're bringing 3 individuals into the world differently than how you were.
Yeah,
And that's the important part.
that is so true because I saw the power of like having a good relationship
Yeah.
with your kid
Yeah.
for them to be able to communicate in that way. At the same time, it's just like putting your foot down, like, and handling things
Right.
when they should be handled to set the standard to show like, hey, we don't allow this to happen
Right.
to us because the kids are watching. And I really like it was so powerful because it's like there was something I was listening to the other day, and me and my therapist, we've been talking about like, working on things as far as like, self-respect, respecting, finding somebody that respects you.
Yeah.
And it's, it's so much mental than it is verbal. A lot of people like, try to speak stuff into existence. We got to do the work.
Do it.
That's the hard
Yeah.
work, and it was one of those things where like we had went through so much of like, talking about like, respect and love to the point where I was like, what, I want somebody that respects me, and so I started like, working on myself and working on the business, and
You got to respect yourself first.
yeah.
And you didn't for a long time.
Yeah, I didn't for a long time, and that's the thing that one of the reasons why I was like, I want to share this with any and everybody, because it's like when you're in that place of not knowing like your worth or value, you cycle
Yeah.
in bad relationships or bad habits or bad situations and continue to like, oh, this is okay. and then you're in another situation that's similar, but it's a different person.
Right.
But it's the same
situation.
you know, until you actually just change, like, you know what? I deserve better.
Yeah.
You know, I deserve this, I deserve that, and start to like basically create value.
Yeah.
Where there was nothing. Yeah. And expect value. And at this point, it's just like, man, everything's been going great. You know, in a great relationship, I couldn't have like planned this,
right.
you know? And like business wise, it's just like, you know, like everything, like all the work that I've done, like makes me so happy now as a person to like be a part of my own life and world, you know? To before it was like, oh God, I gotta get up, then I gotta deal with this person,
right.
you know?
Right.
But now it's just like, I love me
yep.
and I love like how things are going. And even if it's not going great, we're going to work through that,
right.
you know?
Right.
And I think like, you know, changing like the way that you process and think about things, and changing like, you know, working on that, taking those old bad mental habits and you know, and being positive about it, but working on it, you know, and not just talking about it, because so many people talk about it. There's so many quotes out there, you know, but it's just like, you know, and I was one of those people back in the day. I was just like posting quotes. They were great, but my life sucks.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I was just like, I want this to be my life, but it wasn't my life. Yeah. Now it is my life, you know? So when I share stuff, it's like, it comes from the heart.
Yeah.
And it comes from like, okay, here's the place that I am. This is what I learned.
Right.
And this is what I want to share, you know?
Well, for me, I think I know that I had to redefine what success was.
Oh man, that's good.
Success for me is waking up every day and being like, I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah.
I have a heart of joy, versus not wanting to get out of bed and praying that I die in my sleep, or praying someone would take me out when I was driving on the 101 in LA or whatever it was. Like, if we redefine what success is, it puts a different value system in our own life. Yeah. So if success is for you, how big your house is, what kind of car you drive, like, that has nothing to do with who you are as a human being and what's going on in your heart and your head.
Man, that is, what you said is so powerful, because when I was dealing with everything, like even like I just had a conversation with one of my friends today about this, because I was like, man, I had it all, you know, financially stable. We're making over 6 figures.
Right.
You know, if I wanted a car, I could buy the car, you know, and that to me was value. That was success.
Yeah.
But the way I treated people was horrible.
Yeah.
You know, but when I lost all of that and I realized like I was in a lower place, and the people that I treated that I felt were lower than me probably have more self-respect, you know, and I was just like, I never want to be that person to put value in things and monetary success.
Right.
But I want to love myself and love my life and share that love with other people.
Yeah.
That's success.
Because guess what? At the end of the day, you come into this world alone and you're going out alone.
That's so true.
So you better be happy with yourself.
Yeah, man. You got to repeat that.
We're going to leave it right there. It's Megan here. If you're enjoying this series, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of 6 Feet Above. I'm your host, Megan Armstrong. Subscribe so you never miss another episode, and follow me on Instagram at 6 Feet Above Podcast to keep the conversation going. Tune in next week for a brand new episode. This episode is a product of Audiographies, produced by Denora Sepolia, edited by Jacob Smullian, and the music was by Keenan Willis, funded by yours truly. I'll see you next time.